Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, up there in
New York City.
Fangraphs Jon Tayler is here.
Yes.
John, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good. It's free agent time now. The off season has begun. I think we are now, the free agency has officially started.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting. It's an exciting time if you like mystery teams and rumors and Bob Nightingale's tweets. Big time right now.
It's a big time for America. It's a big time for all of us. I mean, we even went over just the Red Sox hiring a new GM, and it was a former Red Sox pitcher.
Craig Counsell, former Cubs director of pitcher development, essentially.
Really went under the radar here. We made the jokes for weeks, and I was like, you know what I realized? I was reading some stuff about him being a hit at the GM meetings this week, and I was like, you know, I don't think I even asked John in the last 2 weeks because of the World Series and everything else. Like, hey, John, you have a new GM. Everyone said no, but Craig said yes.
No. Craig said yes, mostly because this is an astonishing promotion for him. I don't say astonishing when it comes to, you know, what he knows or what he's good at. He's actually done quite well when it comes to his previous role with the Cubs, working in primarily, like I said, in pitcher development. He's had some pretty notable success there, particularly for a club that up until the last 2 or 3 years really had not been able to develop much of any homegrown pitching. But also this is a guy going from arguably an assistant GM role to controlling an entire front office. It's an enormous step up. It really, I think, says a lot both as to what the Red Sox are prioritizing, which is primarily they need pitching. They need to figure out how to develop it. They need to figure out how to acquire and improve it. But also that, like you said, everybody else said no. Established folks said no. Existing general managers said no. Because, and I think this is something that the firing of Chaim Bloom made pretty clear, you are dealing with interfering ownership that has both the desire to win now, but also on their terms, which is to say without spending too much money, ideally. And you also have, and I think this is something we'll have to wait to see exactly how it plays out, but the presence of Alex Cora as manager, and clearly not just as manager, but also as a manager who has the ear and the backing of ownership, very clearly is someone that ownership supports. Otherwise, I think he would have been gone as well with Bloom. I don't really know how you can split hairs on that one to say, well, it's all Chaim Bloom's fault, but Alex Cora, he gets to stay. Mm-hmm. I have to imagine that for a lot of candidates, there's a sense of not only is this a difficult market, not only is this a difficult division, not only is this an ownership group where the money spigot tends to go on and off without any real control on our part and where the expectations are extremely high, I don't even get to choose my own manager. Yeah. I don't even get to decide who the person I want in charge of this whole thing is on a field level, because that's just Alex Cora. And I get the sense that it's going to be Alex Cora until Alex Cora either no longer wants the job or does something that loses him the job entirely. But I don't know. I will be positive or optimistic. Go Red Sox. I'll be optimistic about Breslow, if only because, again, he did get some good results with the Cubs. I think he seems like a smart guy. You know,
I think the problem is, like, if you're a Red Sox fan, you're just like, yeah, I mean, he could be cool, but if we have an ownership problem, that permeates down into everything. Like, right, how do you get excited about it? It doesn't matter, really.
And I think that's kind of the issue with Breslow is I don't really know how much you can say one way or another. This is his doing. This is his fault. It's all going to come from ownership. And I think depending how particularly I think how free agency goes, given what the Red Sox need, which is to say pitching, and given what this free agent market has a lot of, which is to say pitching, I think we're going to learn pretty quickly within the first couple months of free agency whether or not this ownership group is serious about getting better at the thing they need to get better at, or whether it's going to be more of the same a la Bloom with, well, here's $50 million to work with, good luck. Like, you know, or you can only sign 2-year contracts, good luck. Like, you know, again, I don't know what if any restrictions Bloom had in terms of the job he was able to do, but I don't get the sense ownership gave him a free rein, and it's really going to be telling with Breslow if that is different. Some of that too might just be what Bloom was able to sell them on when he took the job versus what Breslow, you know, was able to sell them on or diagnose. But I remain cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, and I mean, you have opportunities elsewhere. Like there's a rising young GM in Pittsburgh who's developing talent really well. Like maybe you get in that business. Maybe you if this doesn't work out with Craig Breslow, maybe you give this guy Jed Hoyer a call. Like there are options in the Red Sox that they haven't looked at. I mean, whether it's Carrington or
it's funny how many pieces of that former brain trust are now just scattered all over
Yes.
Major League Baseball between Hoyer, Charrington, Mike Hazen out in Arizona, whom they approached and who very quickly said no, thank you. It's again that part said a lot, but I also think, you know, like you said, it's an ownership issue, and until ownership, well, I guess now the onus is now on ownership. Okay, you got your guy, you know, you're starting fresh. Now you've got to prove that you're actually going to put the resources into this to make it work, and it can't just be here's some money for the draft. You know, it's got to be more than that. It's got to be too. Letting Breslow have a free hand when it comes to picking the people he's working with. I think one of the strange things about Bloom was he took over a front office that still had AGMs in Brian O'Halloran, Eddie Romero, Raquel Ferreira, who just were part of the previous administration, who've been there pretty long, or at least in baseball terms, pretty much forever. So it'll be interesting to see who Breslow gets to bring in, who, if anyone, leaves, what the kind of structure of that front office turns into. And also, again, like I said, it's going to be on ownership to open the wallet and make hard decisions money-wise, because there's not really help coming in the farm system, and I don't think that this Red Sox team is in a position to make trades for the kind of, you know, I don't think they're a team that could be in on a Corbin Burns. You know, I'm not sure that they're a team that can pay that kind of freight. But like I said, cautiously optimistic. I think this is far better, obviously, than, you know, when you hear names like Neil Huntington getting batted around, where it's like, really, that the dude who flunked out of the Pirates like 10 years ago, that's what we're looking at. So it could have been worse, basically. And like I said, Breslow seems like a smart guy. He did good work with the Cubs. The thing I think I mainly worry about is he doesn't have that overseer experience, and he also doesn't have that
dog in him.
We'll see if he's got that dog in him, if you put the X-ray up, if you get the little pit bull puppy in his chest. But
yeah,
I will hope for the best for him. You know, I just think this is probably one of the tougher tasks in Major League Baseball, is to run this team as it's currently constructed.
And we just don't know, but we'll see how ownership evolves, and we'll see if they spin, because I think there has been some stuff about whether or not that they might actually dip their toes a little bit more in the free agent pool. So we shall see how that ultimately unfolds, Jon Tayler, in the coming weeks. Something else we'll see unfold in the coming weeks is, Tim Anderson. What does his appeal look like
None,
this winter?
Zero, absolutely nothing.
Is it over?
I don't know if it's over, but this is not a dude who this man's career is on as violent a downswing as possible. It's hit the floor faster than he did when Jose Ramirez decked him. Like, wow. Look, I mean, if you're gonna, and this is the thing about the Tim Anderson experience last year, where it's like, I like Tim Anderson as a player. He's he plays hard. He's got a lot of tools that are really cool, but at the same time, like, last year, his season was the equivalent of just getting decked in that fight. Just a ton of talk, and then immediately gets floored by an awful right hook, too. Like, not even a clean one, not even a good one necessarily. But, you know, I think the thing with Tim Anderson that has always been the concern with him was, and it's similar to a lot of guys whose careers were built, you know, primarily on speed and contact, but not a whole lot of plate discipline or, you know, power, which is that game ages very poorly. And I think you can already see it with Anderson. I mean, look at his WRC plus figures from 2020 onward. Or we'll include 2020. Note there's a shortened season, but from 2019 onward, better. 128, 140 in the shortened season, 118, 110, 60. Yeah, things have gone really, really, really downhill for him very fast. A lot of that is injuries, but like I said, this is a guy who has a career walk rate just under 4%, hasn't posted one above 5% ever in his career. Strikeout rates above 20%. Isolated powers never, as you know, crested 200 in 2020 and has been on a plummet since then. A guy whose game is very reliant on balls in play, making things happen with his legs, making contact within the strike zone to his benefit, but that's also not hard contact in the strike zone. You look at his StatCast numbers, his hard hit rates have never been above 40-some%. You know, that's not particularly high. You're talking about a guy with a barrel rate that's never gotten above, it was 10% in the shortened season, but since then, 7.8, 5.8, 2.9. Not a guy who hits the ball hard. Again, a guy who makes the most out of essentially good batted ball placement and the ability to run out balls and turn grounders into infield hits, to turn bloops into well, I guess bloops into singles anyone can do, turn singles into doubles, or especially with the element of speed, get on base and then steal second or third in the first place and basically get an extra base hit in a roundabout way. That's not there right now. And you have to wonder too, with all the injuries he suffered, and again, with a profile where there's not a whole lot of plate discipline and there's not a whole lot of quality contact, what is there really left? Defensively, he's still got chops. He can still handle shortstop. But the question is, offensively, you might be settling in for like a 90 WRC plus bat. What is that realistically worth on the open market? $8 million? $10 million for a year? And I don't really think you're going to get a team that's going to be willing to give him a multi-year contract. I think Tim Anderson, more likely than not, is going to get some kind of pillow deal, and probably with the second division club. Whatever team out there, whatever bad or rebuilding team out there could use some shortstop help, and maybe has an idea of, look, let's bring him in. If he plays well in the first half, we'll flip him in the second. We'll flip him at the deadline, try to get something out of it. Or maybe it's a second-tier contender that can't necessarily afford or doesn't want to afford essentially anything better. Maybe a team like Miami will try him out and just figure, look, the defense is there. We like guys who make contact a lot. Doesn't matter if you don't walk. Doesn't matter if there's not a lot of power. We just need a steady shortstop. Maybe getting him out of the spotlight is good. Getting him down to Miami, where it's kind of anonymous essentially. I think that's kind of the team you would probably expect to be in on Tim Anderson this offseason. A Miami, maybe a
Boston.
Boy, I cannot imagine a worse combination between player and city than Tim Anderson and the city of Boston. That is a hard no-go for a lot of people.
Well, didn't Justin Turner, he declined his player option, right?
He did, but that was in part because that player option came with a guaranteed, buyout worth $6.7 million, and the option itself was about 13 or so. Which means realistically, all Turner needs to do is get a contract of $8 million or better this offseason, and he will make more money. And given how he was a good hitter last season, he just doesn't really have a defensive position anymore. He should be able to beat that. Some team out there will probably want to...
This man's going to be playing baseball until 30... He's like 40... 48?
I think Turner's probably got like 2 more seasons left.
You say that? How old is Justin Turner? Hold on. He's going to do the
35.
Stephen Bowe treatment, or he's just going to pop up as a manager of the Red Sox in 15 years. We're like...
Turner's 38. That's why I'm saying he's only really got 2 seasons left. And especially because...
That man's going to keep playing.
You saw it last season in Boston, too, I think, that defensively... He doesn't really have a home, and the more you put him out there, the larger the risk becomes that he's going to get hurt, because he's never been a guy who's been able to stay healthy for particularly long stretches of time. 2021 and 2016 are the only 2 seasons of his career he's topped 150 games. It's just not a realistic option, I think, to plug him in as a starting third baseman anywhere. I think if you get him, it's the expectation that he's playing 75% of the time at DH, and of the remaining 25%, the majority of that is probably at first base. He's slotting in at third base maybe, but I see him as more of a DH option. And the other complication with that is most teams don't like having a set DH. I think a lot of teams at this point prefer rotating guys in and out of the DH spot, because that way it lets you give guys a break. It lets you be a little more flexible with your roster. But yeah, I think Turner also, speaking of Miami, I think Miami was clearly hard in on him last offseason. Was trying to make a deal for him at the deadline. Granted, that was Kim Ng, different folks in charge now in Miami. Peter Bendix, formerly of the Rays, is now their general manager. But I can see Miami being in on Turner as well as a kind of low-cost plus offensive addition. But yeah, I think when it comes to Tim Anderson, it's a team like Miami. Maybe it's a team like the A's would be very depressing on a lot of levels. But maybe it's a team like the A's. Maybe it's a team like... I was going to say the White Sox, but I could
actually have the Renaissance.
Sure.
And he'd be solid. He wouldn't be amazing. He'd just be solid for the next decade. The Giants.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're the Giants, and granted, Brandon Crawford is almost certainly done there. I don't think that...
I think that's a seamless transition there for him.
Yeah, and I wonder again if it's something that, their current shortstop, but I guess that's the question is, would they rather get a guy like Anderson to try to hold the fort down, or do they want to just give that position to Marco Luciano, one of their top prospects, and say, hit the ground running and let's see what we have? Or do you sign Anderson as kind of
do the Orlando Arcia type deal, like what the Braves did, where it's like, look, we want Vaughn Grissom to be our everyday shortstop out of the gate here, but also we are trying to win a title here. We're trying to be a team that wins a title every single year. We have high expectations. So if you don't meet it, then we have to have fail safes. And Orlando Arcia turned out to be a solid fail safe last year, getting rid of the NLDS there. But by and large, I think that's probably the way to go. Because, not everyone's going to be Adley Rutschman out here. Not everyone is just coming up doing that. And the Giants have recent history with that, with Bart.
Yeah, I mean, it is an open question because, I mean, you also look at the teams that struggled at shortstop last year that could use the help. I think San Francisco and Boston, I think, are both in the same place where it's like there's not really, they're looking for youth. And unfortunately, like I said, Boston is just categorically not a culture fit for Tim Anderson. Yeah. Like I said, Oakland, Miami, I could see Cleveland being part of that maybe if they could theoretically get him cheap enough. Pittsburgh, if O'Neal Cruz has some kind of setback, possibly, but I just don't see Anderson's market being anything other than essentially last place rebuilding teams, or a team that suffers like a la the Dodgers did last year with Gavin Lux, where he suffers a season-ending injury in spring training, and they're forced to kind of skim the waiver wire. But no, I think Tim Anderson's days of being an impact player are probably done because the profile. It's a profile like similar, I think, to a guy like Carl Crawford, where it's all-star, 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 and then all of a sudden the bottom drops out. And it doesn't really come back, barring a complete change in approach. So, and it stinks. Like, I really like Tim Anderson as a player. I really like who he is and what he represents. It's just not, his game is just not built for longevity, though.
Jon Tayler. A lot of managerial changes.
Yes.
Craig Counsell stolen by the Chicago Cubs, which was a great day.
Wild.
You and I texting back and forth about where that was going to go. My gut said he was either Cardinals or Cubs in the chat, and he ends up on the Cubs. Midwestern guy through and through. It seems like every news story about the Brewers that comes out, it's like, oh, they're going for a long-term rebuild. It's over. And I think he saw the writing on the wall there.
It's a little concerning, isn't it? Everything you hear about Milwaukee, where the vibe just seems to be, we tried, but it's over now.
Yeah. I think they're going into the cellar. Like everything just screams to me that they are going in the tank, Pittsburgh Pirates style, sooner rather than later. But John,
yes.
Mendoza to the Mets.
Carlos Mendoza, yes.
Is it Vot or Vote? Vote?
It's Vote.
That's what I thought. It just doesn't sound right in my head. I see it all the time. Stephen Vote.
Vote or die.
Vote or die. Of all the new managerial changes, Counsell, Mendoza, Vote, who fascinates you the most, and who do you think is the most interesting of the bunch?
I think it's got to be Counsell. I mean, no offense to Vote or Mendoza. I think Vote will be fine. He's had that future manager tab on him for seemingly forever, it feels like.
Yeah.
Mendoza, I don't really know what to expect. He was Aaron Boone's bench coach. There's not, he doesn't really have much of a resume or kind of a background to go forward. I imagine what the Mets are kind of hoping there is just someone who is maybe in that Torey Lovullo mode of just being both, someone who can relate to players at a younger level, but also is pliable with regards to, the willingness to work with sabermetrically inclined front office like David Stearns is. But yeah, it's got to be Counsell. I mean, for starters, the fact that he is there on the biggest managerial contract ever given out in Major League Baseball, 8 years, $40 million, which on the one hand, $5 million a year, I mean, that's chump change in like college football. How much does Nick Saban make a year? 16 million or something?
He makes quite a bit.
Yeah.
Let me see off the top of my head. I mean, he has a lot of other investments. He just bought like 2 car dealerships, and it's like something crazy.
I like that. That's just the go-to way to make money if you're an SEC figure is just get into the car dealership game.
He makes $1.1 million per year.
That's it? Wow, I would have thought a lot more than that. Fine, okay, maybe Jimbo Fisher is the better example in terms of.
Well, you got to remember it's 11 million a year.
Okay, that sounds better.
Sorry.
I was gonna say there's no way Nick Saban makes like a tenth of what Jimbo Fisher does.
No,
that
sorry
would
about
be
that.
Incredibly funny. But yeah, a ton of money for a manager.
Yeah.
Obviously, stealing him away from a division rival is a huge thing. The fact that David Ross got in the process, I think, is also fascinating because there did not really seem to be, at least, not a Cubs fan, obviously, but from my limited read, I did not get the sense that David Ross was considered to be a problem of any sort. I guess this feels more like when the Cubs hired Joe Madden and let Rick Renneria go all those years ago.
Well, I think from the outside, it certainly feels like Counsell is seen as the best manager in baseball, and ESPN had a good piece on like what makes him stand out and just how much value or how many wins he's just pulled from a organization that has severely hindered the on-field product. So it's like we don't
that
really
is basically tied a hand behind his back.
Yes, and he's still been like, I'll just keep winning the division. Try and stop me. I'll just keep doing it. And he's also really, really good at handling the bullpen. Is seemingly that seems like a big Counsell thing. Is a very strong trait of his. So it's like he actually stands out among his peers in that. Look, man, it seems very obvious that he has a tangible impact on his team winning baseball games. And you can't say that for a lot of managers. So I just think when he comes available, hey, David, we love you. Thank you for the memories. But like this guy moves the needle. It's like, just, I don't know. I feel like there was like a all understanding with baseball fans of like, I mean, it's Craig Counsell. You got to do it.
Yeah, and like I said, it reminds me of the Cubs dumping Rick Renteria for Joe Madden pre-World Series. But what I think is really instructive about Counsell is given how much he's being paid, and given, too, what you just said, that he has made himself this reputation as a guy that can turn, pardon my French, chicken shit into chicken salad for the majority. What does that mean the Cubs are going to do? Does them spending this money on Counsell indicate that they are ready to reopen the coffers and they're going to go big and assemble this big roster around him? Or does hiring Counsell mean that they're like, hey, that thing you did in Milwaukee, just come do it in Chicago. Are we going to give you more money? Absolutely not. We're expecting you to do the exact same thing. Essentially, you turn straw into gold. Great. Here's a huge pile of straw. Get spinning. Like, and I think again, as with Boston, we're only going to be able to tell in the offseason that is now here and in free agency what the Cubs plan on doing.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if their one expenditure of the offseason, so to speak, was a manager, and if they thought, well, everything else is tip top, we can just move on from here. Like, this is a team that missed out on the playoffs last season, and granted, not by much, and mostly because they just kind of, chunked it in September, which is also probably a pretty big reason why Ross has gone. I don't think he can. It's hard to survive something like that, even if there isn't a Counsell available. But this team still needs work. There still needs to be things done, and even if Milwaukee is going to take that step back, and even if St. Louis isn't back at that contender level yet, and even if Cincinnati isn't there yet, and even if Pittsburgh, well, they don't matter. But
they might soon. Who knows?
But that's the thing. I wonder, too, if the layout of the NL Central, and if the belief that the Brewers are taking that step back and saying this window has now closed, we were never going to be able to keep this going forever, particularly because ownership doesn't want to spend big here. Are the Cubs looking around and going, hey, 85 wins is probably enough to take this division next year. We don't really need to go big this offseason. And we've just picked up the manager who probably makes the biggest difference in terms of those marginal, getting the most out of your roster, like that one extra win that would be so crucial. This is is this guy more impactful than anyone we could sign? Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think Chicago should not stop here, but it is fascinating to me what his signing theoretically says in two completely different directions. Again, it could mean the gates are now open again at Wrigley. Spend. We're going to buy our way to a World Series once again. Or we're going to aim for We're going to aim for 85 wins. We've got a guy who's really, really good at doing that, and then we'll figure it out from there. I don't know. I want to. Again, I want it to be the former. I want teams to try harder than aiming for essentially the basement and hoping that that's enough. But I worry because, again, the NL Central is where hope goes to die for the most part. And who knows? Maybe that is the push for the Cubs is he did it in Milwaukee. He could do it here, and we're not going to give him any extra either. Just, he'll just get to do it at a nicer stadium. Maybe. I don't know. I shouldn't say that because Milwaukee Stadium is perfectly fine. It's just kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and actually, here's what I'll give you credit to Milwaukee builders here. Ardent listeners to the podcast, the builders involved in the Milwaukee baseball stadium, which will always be Miller High Life Park.
Yeah, it's American family. Get the hell out of there.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
It's the High Life.
That's your bread and butter there. I don't know how you're not a presenting sponsor of Miller High Life, and
I really
you
should
be given season tickets or like passes.
If anyone on the Brewers or at Miller InBev is Miller Coors, whatever, is listening to this, please send me your product. I will not promote it. I will not acknowledge it, but I will consume it.
There you go. Hey, look, he enjoys the product the way that John intended. He's a man of principle.
I am a man of principle. No free clout. No promoted clout, no clout at all. I will not help you in that capacity.
Not a clout guy.
Not a
But
clout
all
guy.
that to be said, it's a different looking park. And so many parks now just look the same and no one takes chances on weird looking parks. And hey, it's different. Like when you watch the game, you're like, hey, that's clearly Milwaukee. That's a different looking park, which I prefer.
I will also appreciate that the when I went there, I've been there once, and they sell Long Island iced teas in the stadium. Which, granted, they are not particularly strong Long Island iced teas, but it's still a Long Island iced tea, and it's only like $12. In case you were wondering,
those are going to go up, by the way, over the next couple years of Brewers baseball.
Like, you think Corbin Burns pays for himself? No. I also want to note Milwaukee Stadium has more bathrooms than any stadium I've ever been to in my life.
Huh.
Which makes sense given how much drinking and how drunk everyone there is.
A lot of cheese.
A lot of cheese, a lot of beer. Like, you just
You're going to need to go to the bathroom. You need
constantly.
some facilities, yeah.
Yeah, so all of which is to say, Milwaukee, a good town with good baseball, with a good baseball stadium, but I worry about the Brewers. I worry about the NL Central. Again, it just seems
Why are you worrying about the NL Central, John? There's so many other things. Just text me when you're starting to wane and you're like, it's 8 o'clock at night and you're just like, the Pirates, I don't know if they're going to get out of the mud. And I'm like, John, stop it.
What's going to happen to the Reds farm system? Again, it is survival of the cheapest. That's just how that division operates. It's kind of
what's funny is both Centrals are like that. The AL and NL Central they operate in the same world.
Look, I mean, if we want to talk the other Chicago team that is just
no, we don't.
Chris Getz openly came out and said, "I don't like our roster," which is just on a phenomenal start to the offseason for the White Sox. On top of, hey, everyone, that announcer you all love because he's really, really good at his job, he's leaving.
And not only that, he's going to a rival. Yeah. He's going to the Tigers. They open next year with the Tigers, which is great.
That's in Chicago too. That's like this offseason is
the other part of that too. With it's not even the White Sox. I didn't realize how close Milwaukee is to Chicago, but that does suck if you're a Brewers fan. Is just the Cubs fans are going to make this as painful as humanly possible, and they're going to stack Milwaukee. They're going to make the trip to really rub it in. Yeah, you look like a farm system now to the Cubs.
I mean, look, and that's been going on for a bit now. The Milwaukee, Chicago, back and forth to the point. Where I remember the Brewers had a thing where it's like for Cubs series, like priority for ticket sales is going to residents of Wisconsin. Like everyone else is backseated for that. But
Naperville, you're out.
Good off season start on the north side. Bad off season start on the south side.
Man. And I don't see the South Side getting any better anytime soon.
No.
They're committing to small ball, though, John. That's one.
So are the Yankees, apparently. The Hal Steinbrenner has put his top men on the case and has decided that the way to winning baseball in 2024 is bunting.
I love it. What a world. Jon Tayler, what can the good folks check out for you and the team over at Fangraphs.com this week?
So our top 50 free agent list is out, came out on Thursday. You can check it out right now. Ben Clemens and the rest of Ben Clemens did a big chunk of the writing of all the rest of our writers. Did some player notes. We've got projections, valuations, crowdsourced contract estimates. It's huge. It's great. A lot of people put a lot of time and energy into it. Please check it out. I think it's a very, very, very good list. We have Jay Jaffe doing his Hall of Fame stuff already. He is looking at the managers, umpires, and executives on the contemporary ballot, the Contemporary Veterans Committee ballot that will be voted on at winter meetings and revealed at winter meetings. So if you're interested in the Hall of Fame chances of the likes of Lou Piniella or Davey Johnson or Jim Leland or Country Joe West, who is now up for and is almost certainly going to make it into the Hall of Fame. So get ready for that speech where he ejects people from the audience like every 5 minutes. Go check out Jay's profiles as they come out. A reminder, too, the Hall of Fame ballot itself will probably be out sometime in the next 2 weeks. Once it comes out, Jay is going to kick off his Jaws profiles. There are tons of new names that are going to be added to the ballot, most notably Adrian Beltre and Joe Mauer.
Probably first ballot guy that's there.
Yes, I think so, too. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, now that free agency has started, come on over to Fangraphs. Anytime there's a trade, a signing, anything, we will be on it to give you the full breakdown. And while you're there, come sign up for a membership. $10 a month, $60 a year, gets you ad-free browsing, plus lots of other perks. Fangraphs, we are off-season baseball good.
There you go. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Yep.